In this video, we will explore 6 things that most people don't know about New Zealand's contribution to the Vietnam War. The Kiwis provided a vital role throughout the war, including much humanitarian aid by their medical teams, assisted the Australian ground forces with effective fire support from their artillery units, and provided resupply missions critical to the overall war effort. Here are 6 incredible facts about the Kiwis in Nam. Number 6. Medical assistance. While a civilian surgical group was sent to Vietnam in April of 1963, it wasn't until 1967 the deployment of the first New Zealand Services medical team, which would start providing immense relief to both the civilian population and military personnel. This 19-strong detachment consisted of medical personnel from the Royal New Zealand Air Force, Royal New Zealand Navy, and the Royal New Zealand Army Medical Corps. The team's role was to provide medical and surgical assistance to the South Vietnamese civilians, as well as to military personnel. The New Zealanders would soon relieve a United States Army medical team at Bang Son in Binh Dinh province. They also treated military casualties who were brought to the Bang Son dispensary, including Army of the Republic of Vietnam personnel and even Viet Cong prisoners. In June 1969, the team moved to the new 100-bed Bang Son Impact Hospital, which operated at near capacity, with the average number of beds used at any given time being 92. Approximately 46,000 outpatients, mostly civilians, were treated annually before the team's withdrawal in December 1971. Overall, there were 98 personnel involved over the 4.5 years of the team's deployment, 47 from the Army, 27 from the Air Force, and 24 from the Navy. The Kiwis medical teams, civilian and military, were a tremendous help to the Vietnamese civilians and the military soldiers it treated during that time. Today, a rebuilt Bang Son Hospital, seen here, reopened in 1998. Number 5. Economic assistance. New Zealand contributed non-military economic assistance to South Vietnam from 1966 onwards, with the equivalent of nearly $350 million on average each year, or the equivalent of $3.3 billion in today's money. This funding went to several mobile health teams to support refugee camps, the training of village vocational experts, to medical and teaching equipment for the Way University, equipment for a technical high school, and a contribution towards the construction of a science building at the University of Saigon. Number 4. Military presence. Beginning in June 1964, New Zealand would commit military forces to the Vietnam, beginning with 25 Army engineers that would establish their headquarters in Thu Dau Mot, the capital of Binh Duong province, about 20 kilometers or 12 miles north of Saigon. The engineers would be engaged in many reconstruction projects that included road and bridge building. Kiwi engineers would also typically be allocated to other units to provide construction and maintenance of facilities. In total, New Zealand would contribute over 3,000 military personnel throughout the Vietnam War. New Zealand would lose 37 killed and 187 wounded throughout the war. What about the Navy and air units? Well, that's next on our list. Number 3. Navy and Air Ops. The Royal New Zealand Navy did not make a sea contribution to New Zealand's military involvement in the Vietnam War, but otherwise contributed personnel beginning in April 1967, with the Royal New Zealand Navy medical members being a part of the Tri-Service New Zealand's medical team previously discussed. Beginning in 1965, the Royal New Zealand Air Force contribution was in the form of transportation, with No. 40 Squadron providing troop transport for New Zealand, Australian, and some American troops, and No. 41 Squadron providing resupply missions fortnightly from Singapore. Over 20 Royal New Zealand Air Force personnel served as forward air controllers with the U.S. Air Force 20th Tactical Air Support Squadron at Da Nang Air Base and the U.S. Air Force 19th Tactical Air Support Squadron at Bien Hoa Air Base. From mid-1967, a number of pilots and crew from No. 3 Squadron served with No. 9 Squadron Royal Australian Air Force based in Vung Tau. A further small detachment of Royal New Zealand Air Force A-4 Skyhawk pilots were attached to the U.S. Marine Corps VMFA 311 Marine Aircraft Group 12 at Shilang in 1970. The last No. 41 Squadron flight of the country departed on the 21st of April 1975, carrying 38 embassy staff and refugees. Number 2. Special Forces. New Zealand did provide special forces in the Vietnam War. In November 1968, New Zealand's contribution to the 1st Australian Task Force was increased by the deployment of 4-troop New Zealand Special Air Service comprising an officer and 25 other ranks. The arrival of this troop raised New Zealand's deployment to Vietnam to its peak, 543 men. The troop was detached to the Australian SAS squadron at Nui Dat and carried out long-range reconnaissance and the ambushing of enemy supply routes, mounting 155 patrols over 3 tours until being withdrawn in February of 1971. Although under operational command of the Australian SAS squadron commander when deployed in the field on operations, the 4th Troop was an independent command and self-sufficient. And finally, number 1, Decorated Artillery Unit. On the 27th of May, 1965, New Zealand's Prime Minister announced the government's decision to send the 161 Battery Royal New Zealand Artillery to South Vietnam in a combat role. The New Zealand Army Detachment engineers were replaced by the battery in July 1965, which consisted of 9 officers and 101 other ranks manning 4 105mm L5 pack howitzers, later increased to 6, and in 1967 replaced with a 105mm M2A2 howitzer. This artillery unit would be pivotal in a number of combat battles and smaller engagements, including the battles of Long Tan and Bin Ba, which I have made separate videos on. I'll put a link above and in the description below. The 161 Battery was initially under the command of the United States 173rd Airborne Brigade, which had newly arrived to Vietnam and was based at the Bien Hoa Air Base near Saigon, along with 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, the first of Australia's ground forces in Vietnam. In June 1966, Australian forces were detached from the 173rd and given their own tactical area of responsibility and tasked with establishing a base at Nui Dat in Phuoc Tuy Province, renamed the 1st Australian Task Force. Also in June 1966, the New Zealand government was given the choice of allowing its New Zealand battery to remain at Bien Hoa with the 173rd under the U.S. command or integrate with the new Australian Task Force. It was decided that the battery would join the 1st Australian Task Force and serve with the Royal Australian Artillery field regiments. Forward observers of the battery would patrol with all infantry companies of the Australian and New Zealand infantry while on operations, to direct artillery and support when called upon. The United States awarded the 161 Battery the Meritorious Unit Commendation. In 2019, the Australian Army for the first time formally honored the New Zealand Artillery Battery Unit for courage and for supporting their operations in the Vietnam. This is the first Australian unit citation for gallantry ever offered to a New Zealand military unit.
The barrage thuds on into the night.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this. Your support is truly appreciated. Catch you on the next one.